going on, guys? Welcome back. Today we are doing the second part of the file transfer for Hack the Box. So this is the Hack the Box Academy file transfer methods. I'm actually going to cover the Linux one. I covered the Windows one last week, and now we're going to cover the Linux one. Now, I will tell you, in my opinion, Linux is much easier. So I recommend, if you can, use Linux. But nowadays you don't have to, so that's a nice thing. So make sure you know the Windows method, because you're going to probably be taking over Windows machines, but I prefer Linux. So let's get right into it. All right, so here they said Linux is a versatile operating system. A few years ago, we were contracted to perform incident response on some web servers. We found multiple threat actors, blah, blah, blah. 6 out of the 9 web servers were investigated. The threat actors found a sequel, blah, blah. They used a bash script that, when executed, attempted to download another piece of malware. We showed that in the last one, the tree of downloading additional pieces of the malware to make one major attack, basically, right? And it said the download another piece of malware that was connected to the threat actor's command and control server, so the C2 server. The bash script they used tried 3 download methods to get another piece of malware. So that's actually interesting. It actually had a fallback as well, which is pretty sophisticated, right? It tried curl. If that failed, it attempted to use wget. If that failed, it used Python. All 3 methods used HTTP. Now, that's important to note, because a lot of people try to use, or a lot of APTs, I should say, and pen testers will try to use HTTP and HTTPS because the firewall will allow it to go through. So that's why they're trying to use those. Although Linux can communicate via FTP, SMB like Windows, most malware on all different operating systems use HTTP and HTTPS. Exactly what I just said. Okay, so now let's review some of the different ways. Now, I didn't cover this in the last one because I kind of assumed it was assumed knowledge, which is a fault of me, because that's what I hate about Hack the Box, is that they do assume knowledge, and I don't like that, and I shouldn't have done that. So I apologize firstly. So what I'm talking about is just this first piece where they actually encode with base 64 and then decode. I didn't really talk about it because I thought it's assumed knowledge, but it's not, and that's on me. So I want to talk about it. So what they're doing here with this cat ID RSA base 64 is they're actually using the ID RSA key, which is a login method for SSH, and they're piping it to base 64. So they're encoding the file itself, right? But if you know the file, it's a text file anyway. And so they're encoding the file, and then they're writing it out so that you can see it, so they can copy it, right? So here is the whole file. Now, the reason they're doing this, right, is because instead of transferring an actual physical file, right, instead of saying, hey, I need to transfer this file out, even if, let's just say you did this, let's say you didn't have a way to transfer this out. Let's say you're like, crap, I can't get this out because it'll be noticeable. You could even just take a picture. Think about that. Like, that's how easy this could be. If you were already on the machine and you had that ID RSA, you could take a picture. You'd have to take a lot of pictures because you have to get this whole thing. But if you get that whole thing, you can then go replicate it, and however you want to get it out, it doesn't really matter. Then you can decode it by putting the same thing in there and then piping it to base 64 tac D, which is decode, into a new file called IDRSA. So you can extract that data without actually having to extract that data. Meaning you didn't actually have to take it out of the network. You could have copied it. Now, obviously, this would take a very long time for large files, so I don't recommend just sitting there taking pictures, but you could if you didn't want to get caught. The other piece is it's a lot easier to get text out than it is to get files out. So most of the time, if you're really serious about data exfiltration, you're going to convert a file into something text to get out, maybe using DNS or something like that. But you can use HTTP and HTTPS also to try and transmit files and not be suspicious. So there's a lot of different methodologies here, a lot of ways you could do it, a lot of ways to skin the cat. I think that's what they say. Hopefully that's correct. Otherwise, that sounds horrible, which it actually kind of sounds horrible anyway, so I apologize. I don't think I've ever used that phrase, but anyway, so now we have here, and all they're doing here is at the beginning they were validating the hash, so that way they're validating that the encoded file matches this. And the reason they do that is because they did it from text, or so from file to text to file, they need to make sure that nothing got changed. So that's what they're going to do, because at the end of the day, if you mess up one of these characters and you don't know it, you're still going to get a file on the other side. You don't know if it's going to be accurate or not. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about some different methods on Linux. Web downloads with wget and curl. So this is very similar to the PowerShell commands we ran before, but you can use wget and you can see here they're using it for lin enumeration.shell, and they're just saying, hey, wget. They posted where they want the file, and then the out file, they're putting it in the temp linenum.sh. So right off the bat, they're saying, hey, I want this file from this browser, name it this. Pretty easy, pretty simple, right? Curl is very similar to wget, but the output file name option is lowercase tac o for curl. So if you want to use curl, that's the only difference right there, the output file name. And you can see they put the output file name at the beginning, temp lin enumeration, and then they just put the boom. So right off the bat, two different ways, wget and curl, same concept, right? Now, fileless attacks using Linux. This is something I also hope you guys really understand, because fileless attacks are a lot better if you can control them. I'll say that. Don't just start running fileless attacks. Make sure you can control them. So because of the way Linux works and how pipes operate, most of the tools we use in Linux can be used to replicate fileless operations, which means that we don't have to download the file to execute it. What does that mean? We can just take the file and execute it on the operating system. Does it download it? Yes. Does it save it? No. That's the difference. So there's still going to be, if they're watching network logs, they'll still see that network traffic, right? You're not running it from the website, but you're not going to see that file sitting on the operating system somewhere. You're not going to go do a forensic investigation and see it in the downloads folder, right? Some payloads make FIFO write files to disk. Keep in mind that while the execution of the payload may be fileless when you use a pipe, what I just said, depending on the payload chosen, it may create temporary files. So it still is not truly fileless. So understand that. It's important that you understand that. Okay, so let's take the curl command we used, and instead of downloading in Linux Noom, let's execute it. So they used curl. They did this, you notice right off the bat, they took out that tac 0 or tac o, excuse me, because they're not writing it to any file, and then they're piping it directly into bash. So what's that do? It takes the contents of this, which is this linenum.sh, and pipes it into bash. Okay, so similarly, we can download a Python script file from a web server and pipe it into a Python library. So they're downloading a Python hello world file, and here you can see wget, and then they're saying http blah blah blah, and then they're piping it into Python 3, and it's just running and saying, hello world, hi, how's it going, right? So right off the bat, pretty self-explanatory. It just runs it and saves it. It's also the same as what we did in the Windows version. So now there may also be situations where none of the well-known file transfer tools are available. This is true, especially in Linux, because when you download certain Linux flavors and install them, they don't typically, now Python and stuff like that, a lot of times are built in, but some don't have anything. They're just you have to install whatever you want, right? So it's not like there's one method or one image that comes with everything you need. A lot of times you have to download. Now, I know there's flavors out there that you can get with what you need, but that's not what I'm talking about. So now, as long as bash version 2.04 or greater is installed, okay, the built-in dev TCP device file can be used for simple file downloads. I will tell you, this is something you should definitely learn, this dev TCP. I use this to upgrade my shells. I use this to get reverse shells. I use this for file transfer. This is a great tool because, as you know, in Linux, everything is a file. It is in Windows too. It's just not as easy to see. But what they're doing here is they're executing dev TCP, which is just a TCP connection, right? That's the file that is pointing to that. Then the IP and the port. And there you go. Connect to the target web server. That's just going to connect directly to it. And if you guys have the Patreon notes, you know I have reverse shells that have the dev TCP command line in it. It's very nice on those notes. It's very easy. You just boom, boom, upgraded shell, right? Or boom, boom, get a reverse shell. Easy. Now, HTTP GET request. So here we just say echo, tac E for execute, get linenum.sh, okay, HTTP 1.1, blah, 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 blah. All that is honestly you're just making a GET request. Like if you've ever looked at a packet, that's exactly what you're doing. You're literally just saying, get this, boom. Perfect. Okay, easy enough. Let's see, print the response. Okay, there you go. And you see the 3 goes in and out. That's the connection. Here they're saying cat the back 3. So here you can see they're executing this. And once they're connected, they're echoing, we need to get this. They're basically creating a GET request, which is, again, if you've ever worked with HTTP and you've seen the packets on Burp Suite or anything like that, this is what it's going to look like. Then they're saying, hey, cat that response back in, and you'll get the results. Pretty simple, right? You could easily also script that. You could just take those three and script it, and so it's a one-liner or not a one-liner, or one. You just run it rather than actually connect and run those individual commands. But a lot of people might like that individual command. Also, keep in mind one thing I will tell people is when you're doing this, I've seen this in the wild a few times where people try to connect to a web server, and because it didn't get a certain request in a certain timely manner, it will automatically disconnect you. That is common. The reason is it's a security feature in a way, but it's kind of just a web feature. So just keep in mind, sometimes if you get disconnected while you're trying to type this command out, either A, script it, or B, you may have to run it really fast. And that's just because it understands that you're manually connected versus you're actually using a web server or a browser or something. Okay, so now SSH downloads. If you don't know SSH, Secure Shell, it's a protocol that allows us to securely access remote computers, right? One of the features they have is SCP, Secure Copy. This is something that a lot of people know about, and it's very similar to copy, but it is secure copy. So it'll copy things over a network, and it'll be encrypted, so that's really nice. Now, you can see enabling the SSH server here, they're going to actually say sudo system control enable SSH. So they're enabling that SSH server. The reason they're doing that is because by default, that SSH server on a Linux machine is not turned on. So you have to turn it on. Excuse me. It would make sense to turn it on in this case if you're going to use it to transfer files. And you can see here, once they enabled it, they said, okay, service in hash element, boom, okay, that's a snippet. So they're just saying that's what it's going to pop up and say. Then once it's enabled, you have to actually start it. So you're going to say sudo system control start. And that will actually start it, and then port 22 will be the default port. You can change that if you want in the configuration files, but it'll be by default 22. And then you can see when they use netstat to look at the connections, they have a listening on 22, which is your SSH port. So right away, they're allowing all foreign addresses to actually connect to it if they wanted to, if you have the correct credentials. Now, I will tell you, I do not recommend doing the SSH piece unless you know what you're doing, because you're opening yourself up. You're just opening SSH to have people connect. If you know what you're doing, absolutely go for it. It's a great tool, especially if the other piece can connect to it, right? But just be careful. Okay, so now downloading, you just use secure copy. Like they said up here, it's very similar to the copy command. You just SCP, secure copy, plain text at 192 and that's the account. And then here, root, myroot.txt, and that's the file they want, right? So they're just saying, hey, give me that file. You can create a temporary user account for file transfers and avoid using primary credentials or keys on a remote computer, which is very true. You can just create a temporary, hey, I'm going to stand up this, or I'm just going to start this SSH server, and then boom, I can pull the credentials. One thing you could do too is you can have this completely set up where you already have it enabled, you already have the configuration file changed, you already have the accounts you want set up and everything, and then you just start it, transfer the files, and then you can just say sudo system control stop, and it will turn it right back off, right? So there is a way you can do that without actually having to stand it all up every single time. You can have this where every time you just one command, boom, you run it, you're done. So, all right. Now, upload operations. There are situations such as binary exploit and packet capture analysis where we must upload files from our target, right? This is pretty common. What if we need to take a file from the target versus the opposite, right? Packet capture analysis. What if we're running a packet capture on the target because we want to see who it's talking to? We need that packet. We need that packet, right? We need to look at it, but we don't want to sit there and analyze it on the machine because we're just sitting there eating up packet and economy and showing our cards, right? We want to set up a packet capture, grab it, send it over, right? Very common, very good method. So how can we do that? Well, we can start the Python upload server, which we talked about previously, and I actually really like doing. But what it is you just say sudo python3 m pip install. If you've ever used the Python simple server, which we're going to use today again, I used it previously, but we're going to use it again. You'll see that this is just the opposite in the sense that it's going to have an upload server. So it's going to have the Python simple server is going to be running, but it's going to have a /upload, and you could push files to it. So you can actually say, hey, take this file, and the upload server will take it, right? Now, here they're saying create a self-signed cert. The reason they do this is because you want to use HTTPS, okay? So if you use a self-signed cert, it will actually still work because you're still encrypting it. You're just using a self-signed cert, so there is no certificate authority actually saying vouching for it, right? Now, once you actually do this, you set up this SSL cert, you can make a directory. You don't have to do this, but you don't want the directory to the when I say you don't want the directory, you don't want this SSL cert to be in the directory that you're hosting on there, right? You wouldn't just be like, hey, I'm encrypting my data, here's the keys for my encrypted data, because then it can just be decrypted. So you don't want that the certificate that you're creating to be in the directory that you're hosting. Hopefully that makes sense. You do not want it there. So make sure you either move it or put it in a different directory. That's what they did here, is they made a directory HTTPS and then they changed directories into that, so that way they are presenting a different upload server and not presenting the certificate to everybody. So now they're saying here, we say sudo python 3 tac-im upload server. They're going to use port 443, and then the server certificate, excuse me, that they're going to use is that one server.pem that they created right here. So now that it's encrypted, it's sitting there, blah blah, self-signed cert, all that's good, right? Now you make a curl request on the machine that you took over, the attack box, right? And you can say, hey, curl x post. So you're just going to say, I want a post method. I want to send it to upload, and the files I want to send are F for files, obviously. Files equals the Etsy password in this case, and then F here, the Etsy shadow. Now, you notice they have this tac insecure. You have to do that because the certificate is self-signed. It is not authorized by a CA. So therefore, it will raise a flag. It will raise an error unless you say insecure. So make sure you get that insecure in there. And this will push the file in a post request to the upload server, and then we'll see it on our server. Okay, so now alternate web file transfer methods. These are all different methods. This is the one that I use. I probably use this daily, literally. The Python 3 http.server. It just stands up, it hosts your directory, whatever directory you're in, you run it, and it'll present those files on that IP and port 8000. You can change it to whatever port you want, but it's very nice. And these other ones do the exact same thing. They just do it with a different language. So here, Python 2.7. You don't even have to put 2.7. Just so you know, obviously if you're running 2.7, then put 2.7. But if you just do Python 2 tac-im simple HTTP server, it's the same thing. And then here, PHP S, and then the IP and address, which is 8000. They're using 8000 in all of these, but you can change them just so you know. Again, with the Python, if you want to change the port, you just put it at the end. You put server space whatever port you want. Then you have PHP, then you have Ruby, same thing, Ruby run e httpd, and then you have the period for the directory, port 8000, okay. And then you have, how do we download that, right? We have these files because all these are going to do is host the files of the directory you're in. Well, how do we get those? Well, just go on whatever machine you're compromised. You go wget, curl, whatever method you want, and you say, hey, there's the IP, there's the port, give me this file to transfer.txt, right? Now, we can also use secure copy or the SSH protocol to upload files as well. So we say secure copy, Etsy password in this case. So if you remember, we're on the compromised machine. We're trying to take files, in this case, the Etsy password. We're trying to push it to something, right? So we say we want to go ahead and connect to the Hack the Box student, and then we're going to connect to their home Hack the Box student directory, and we're going to secure copy that, right? When we do that, it's going to ask for our password, which in this case, you need a username password, obviously. And when we do that, it'll transfer the file directly. So secure copy is just a copy. It can go either way, upload, download, either way. So that's the meat and the potatoes of it, right? So now let's get through some of these questions, okay? So the first one says download the file flag.txt from the web root using Python from the pwn box. Submit the content files as your answer. Now, let's look at the cheat sheet, and you can see here they say download PowerShell, upload PowerShell, blah, blah, blah. And you can see they actually don't have it on here, which is funny, but I'm not going to download the cheat sheet. I was looking to see if they had a Python, but they don't. So all you have to do for this one, really simple, right? wget, and you can just say HTTP, and we can actually just copy this. Now, one complaint, not complaint, I'm sorry, one thing I get a lot is I get people that can't think outside the box sometimes, and they'll say, and you can say flag.txt, right? There we go, we get it. I get people all the time that say, yeah, but it said to use Python. It did, you're right. Guess what? I don't want to. When you're a hacker, think of what method works for you. What's the easiest method for you? With the Python, I have to think about it. I know I can use wget without thinking, right? So if I've used it 100 times and it works, why would I change, right? I'm not saying be stuck in your ways. I could go make this a Python and work, right? But what I'm saying is think of different methods that work for you. Don't be stuck in a mentality of, I have to do it because that's what someone said or that's how I've seen it, right? Do it how it works for you. So for instance, I could also do this. I actually do this quite a bit where I'm like, you know what? The easiest way for me to get this, if I can get it, there we go, is for me to just look for it, right? And you can see it says forbidden. Well, that's because it doesn't want us to use the user agent, most likely. I don't know that, but so you have to actually do it from a request like this. But if I knew this in real life, that I need a file, whatever, and it's hosted on a web server, I might just open a browser and go to it, right? I don't need to do it the way they tell me to. Now, does that mean that I couldn't figure out the Python method or that I couldn't go make a Python request? Absolutely not. But it means I don't want to waste the time when I know wget works just fine. Just like if I'm on any other machine and something simple like that, a little one-liner can be done, why am I going to make it complex? So just think that way when you're doing these. Also think, if I know a different way, this isn't a question, it's not a demand. They don't say if you don't use Python you don't get the right answer, right? I still get the right answer right there. Cat flag.text. I can't tell you how many times I've done on our weekly CTFs where people are like, well, I saw a walkthrough, or I did it this way, or great, there's other ways to do this, right? Make sure you do it other ways. Look at other people's ways. What works for you? Find out what works best for you. So this one, SSH to the box and upload the attached. Okay, so firstly, here I'm SSH'd in. You can see hack the box, and I'll exit just to show you guys the method. So SSH, hack the box student at 10.129, and then here's the password. Copy that bad boy. So we SSH in, paste the password, and we're in. Perfect. Now if we go to ls, we don't have anything in the directory. So it says upload the attached file named uploadnix.zip. Okay, so how do we do this? You copy the link address, you go back to your regular machine because they want us to upload it. We could just do it from here, by the way. If you really wanted to take shortcuts, we could just do it from here. But we go here and we say wget http. Actually, you don't have to put http, just copy and paste the whole address. Now we have the uploadnix.zip, but keep in mind, we need the hash of the file inside, so we can just say unzip uploadnix.zip. Now when we look, we have this uploadnix.text. So now what we can do is we can say python3 tac-im http.server, and this is going to automatically set it up on 8000. Well, 8000 is already in use, so we're going to use 1234. And you can see we're serving it up on port 1234. We're going to go back here, simple wget http, and then 10, and then what's my IP? 15.222, 15.222, 1234, upload nix.text. Look at that. We got it. Now it says to run the command hasher to upload nix.text. There's our hash. 159 da da da. There it is. So it's that easy, guys. I know I make it look easy at times, but if you don't think too hard about it, I see people overthink it all the time. They're like, well, I don't know what to do. It says I have to do it this way. I don't really understand. Do it however makes sense to you that makes it easy for you, right? In this case, could I have uploaded the zip file and tried to unzip it on the machine? I could have, but who knows if it would have worked. It's louder because you're making more processing more stuff. So make sure you're doing as much as you can offline and then presenting it online best you can. So hopefully this makes sense to you guys. And then the optional exercises, again, these are for you guys to practice. So I get requests sometimes too for people to say, do the optional exercises. The optional exercise says connect to it and practice various transfer file methods, right? So it doesn't do me any, or it doesn't do you any good to have me practice in front of you. It does you good to get on and practice. So let me know what you guys think. Hopefully this helps you guys, and hopefully you guys can continue with, we're going to continue with the file transfer, go on to the stage 2. The next one is, what is the next one? Next one is transferring files with code. So I'm going to assume we're going to be using various types of languages and things like that. But make sure you guys practice these because these are invaluable. I use them all the time, especially the Python ones because they're just so simple and easy. But make sure you guys enjoy it. Hopefully you guys like it. And if you do, hit that like button, hit that sub button. Thank you guys. Have a great day.